Good morning. Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us today, December 8, 2022. It's a Thursday, and if I remember, it is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. So, para sa mga Catholics, I suppose it is a day for Mass and Communion. Anyway, welcome to the program. Thank you to all of you who are subscribers of Cignal TV and those who view us on channels 8 and 250 on One News. Thank you also to those who watch us via Facebook as well as YouTube. And of course, maraming salamat sa PLDT Home Fiber Optic Internet, especially to Mr. Marco Borlongan, because without their assistance, we would not be airing from the beautiful city of Lipa, where we are today. In any case, thank you, and let's get on with the day's starter. And it goes, don't make a permanent decision for your temporary emotion. Let me repeat. Don't make a permanent decision for your temporary emotion. You may decide to walk out the door and tell someone to go to wherever because you are angry and not realize that that could lead to a permanent decision. Kumbaga, naghiwalay ang puti sa dikolor. And be careful about letting your passions get the best of you and then jumping into bed with someone and that someone gets pregnant. And sa Indonesia raw po, you can be imprisoned for premarital sex according to a law or a proposed law. So do not make a permanent decision for your temporary emotion. Okay? Yung mga galit-galit or mga nagmamadali, don't rush into things, especially if you are an executive or you are a political leader. Okay, now let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star, December 8, 2022. And the headline is House drops SSS GSIS funds from the Maharlika Sovereign Fund Bill. Okay, after facing headwinds, storms, and a deluge of criticism, the members of Congress have decided to drop the inclusion of social security system and government service in insurance system from the potential sources of funding for the Maharlika Sovereign Fund. According to lawmakers, instead of being able to fast-track it before the Christmas vacation of the Congress men and women, they will now drop SSS and GSIS, pero they will be targeting the investable funds of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Okay, so medyo bantayan pa rin po natin yan kasi pera naman yan ng mga OFW. But in reaction to the proposed Maharlika Wealth Fund, you see in the center photo of the Philippine Star, protesters stage a rally in front of the House of Representatives, and it's a very important point. No to Maharlika Wealth Fund, wage bills i-certify as urgent. Ayan po. So, they are trying to get the attention of Congress to focus on the more urgent, more important requests of citizens to their representatives. Ang hirap po kasi sa Pilipinas, we elect representatives who misrepresent us. Hindi naman po lahat. May mga kaibigan tayong congressman at congresswomen na matino. Okay. Anyway, at the top of the front page, PSA 4.5% jobless rate, lowest in 17 years for October of 2022. Okay? But no cause for celebration because according to the surveys or the results, it seems that although it was the lowest in 17 years in October, it was actually lower than the previous month of 20 September. So kumbaga bumaba pa rin siya. That photo at the top of the front page of the Philippine Star, very disturbing photo. Okay, please look at those images because it is a PDEA district officer nabbed in drug raid. The photo, police officers kicked down the door as they raid the office of the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency's Southern District Office on Tuesday night, arresting PDEA Southern District Office Head Enrique Lucero and 2 PDEA agents and a driver. Images were taken from videos posted by TV5's Arnel Tugade and handouts of the NCRPO office. Ayan po, napakalungkot. That is so tragic and ironic that those who are supposed to enforce the law are the ones breaking the law. Meanwhile, Senator Coco Pimentel has raised the concern as far as the Maharlika Wealth Fund is concerned. He has pointed out that whatever happens, if the wealth fund is launched, 2% of total fund may be manager's fee. Okay, ayan po. We're talking billions, if not trillions here. So he is saying that wala pang kinikita even before the fund is invested or makes a profit. The managers or the officials who will be managing the fund will already be collecting somewhere of 2% of several billion. Ayan po, no? Kumbaga, we will tackle that in the future. Okay, further down the front page, Manila Cathedral to bring back traditional fiesta, especially today. The Catholic faithful, the Manila Cathedral is bringing back today a fiesta tradition by allowing the Catholic faithful to go up to the sanctuary after Holy Mass para mas makalapit sila sa kanilang alay na dasal. Meanwhile, the Commission on Appointments, composed of representatives of the Senate and Congress, have confirmed the appointment of the Secretary of Science or DOST, the Secretary of Information, DICT, and Information Communications, and the DOE Chief, Secretary of Energy, along with 60 officials of the DFA. Meanwhile, senators are calling on the Energy Regulatory Commission to allow Meralco to buy 1,000 megawatts without bidding. Okay, dahil nagsolian na ng kandila mutually. Okay, San Miguel Power Corporation rescinded their contract with Meralco, leaving a deficit in the supply of several hundred megawatts. And now the senators are saying that ERC should help out Meralco. Kung pinakialaman ba ninyo yung desisyon ng ERC, hindi sana tayo namumroblema, no? But now, you want ERC to move after the problem has blown up in everyone's face. 50 million Pinoy still without boosters, but they are doing the Bakunahang Bayan, wherein minors from 5 to 11 will be given the vaccines when as they wish, and those 12 and above will be given their first booster. Okay. And last but not the least, photo of former Senator Manny Villar with during the launch of Scala Praverde Residences and Alegria Residences with the officials. Okay, so ayan na po the front page of the Philippine Star today. Medyo magtitimpi na lang muna ako kasi baka masyado ko nang ma-editorialize yung front page ng Philippine Star. Please get your own copy. Go online, read the online version. There is a lot more information, a lot more of the details behind the front page of the Philippine Star. Now, let's move on to our program as we feature another lady executive in the Philippines who is doing quite well. She is a doctor, a physician, and from physician, she has migrated to being a corporate executive in an international company. Gabrielle, please roll out the Betamax.
Dr. Diana Edralin is the General Manager of the Pharmaceuticals Division of Roche Philippines Incorporated. Prior to Roche, Dr. Edralin was the Medical Director of Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly Philippines. Edralin is also the current President of the Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines.
Good morning, Dr. Diana. I hope you are there already. Good morning sa imo, Doktora.
Good morning, Cito. Yes, I'm here. Maraming salamat. Good morning to you and to your viewers. So great to see you again. And thank you so much for having me today on your show.
Well, I know you're a very busy person because the first time we had scheduled you, nataon na may conference yata or convention. And by coincidence, I happened to be in the hotel where you guys were. So sabi ko, dito pala nalunod si Dr. Diana sa trabaho. Okay.
That's true.
In any case.
Yeah, it's captured in the photos. It was the Swiss Innovation Exhibit, yes.
Okay. Evidence, ano?
Yes.
Pero evidence of compliance. Anyway, Dr. Diana, as I pointed out, you are a physician. What actually was your specialization before you joined corporate?
So I actually started, of course, a general practitioner, and I specialized in occupational medicine. So that was my key focus area because I'm very passionate also about not only treating patients, but also the preventive aspect of it, especially in the workplace.
Okay, was that your first choice in college or in med school? Occupational medicine, because we hear a lot about it, but truth be told,
yes.
Sorry, ignorante po ako tungkol dyan. Hindi ko naintindihan. What exactly is occupational medicine?
Listen. Yeah, so when starting with your question, syempre, I think be honest, I wanted to be our cardiologist when I wanted to specialize because our family is really, especially the men in our family, including my father, has been plagued, unfortunately, with cardiovascular diseases. A lot of them have died with heart attack. But I guess somewhere along the way, because my father is also a labor union leader. So that's where I got interested in occupational medicine, because a significant portion of basically medicine or treatment is focused on prevention. And a lot of these diseases are happening in the workplace. So ang trabaho ng isang occupational medicine specialist is to actually partner, of course, with the leadership teams in the companies, with the health and safety officers. Especially, you will see this not only in the office setting, lalo na yung mga manufacturing sites, yung mga mining, yan, ang dami niyang incident. Even in hotels, you mentioned about hotels. I worked for a time also in a hotel. well, yung mga accidents in the kitchen. So it also happens. So immediate care, but also I think it's 90% prevention and implementing those programs, again, in line with the Department of Labor and Employment, Health and Safety regulations.
Okay, so you got into occupational medicine. And
Yes.
what were your discoveries regarding the state of occupational medicine? Because, I mean, it would seem to me that it is not a popular topic. It is not something that gets the fair amount of media focus. And I will be the first to confess, I've never really featured the topic here on the show.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you raised that, and I think thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk more about occupational health and safety. No, because I think the first thing that why it's very important, because it is an indication of how much we value our workers, our employees, and ourselves. Ensuring that especially in this pandemic, no. Yung safety is very important for us to continue with our business, with our operations. First and foremost, you have to ensure the employee safety and ensuring that as they conduct even our jobs, especially in the hospitals. Actually, I even haven't touched about that. Safety in the hospitals is also very important because that's where you contract infectious diseases as well. So it's a different league on its own, but all of these things are very important. And to your question, what I've discovered, number one is that, to your point, it is, I would say, the focus is not there. It's under budgeted, number one. Not a lot of companies would have employed an occupational health and medicine practitioner. And then the fourth is the compliance in terms of, kasi there are provisions. For example, HIV prevention, TB prevention, drug and safety. So lahat yun, merong mga guidelines on how the organizations and companies can prevent it. And I think there's a huge opportunity. We have made significant progress, Cito, to be quite honest. But to your point, I think there's an even greater opportunity to fully implement and to fund these activities.
For employers and business owners who are watching today, they might think, meron naman kaming HMO eh. But you mentioned employing a functional medicine specialist. Ano ba yun? Do we hire a nurse? Because I know by law, if you have 50 employees, you have to have at least one nurse.
That's correct.
Is that compliant with what you are pointing out as having a functional medicine? Is it occupational?
Yes, occupational medicine.
Occupational medicine practitioner. Which is better, HMO or a doctor on site?
Yeah, so it depends on the nature of the work. And to your point, there are provisions on the number of employees. Kasi HMO, the coverage of that is when there is already illness. Diba? HMO or health insurance coverage is basically there kung meron ng, for your annual physical exam. And then if someone gets hospitalized, there is insurance coverage. Yeah. Whereas with a occupational health practitioner, whether it's a nurse or a doctor, the key there is yung ongoing prevention. As I mentioned, there are current activities on employee health and well-being, like mental health. Hindi siya usually covered ng HMO. So these are the things. So in terms of the preference, there are regulations around it. So to your point, there are specific number of employees. So minsan, depende sa number of employees, you can employ part-time, full-time, or sometimes may combination of doctors. Like when I was practicing, there are days that I am there are days that I'm not there. So depended dun sa need and like I said, the nature of the occupational health hazards in the workplace too.
What are the points of concern or emphasis? Kasi, okay, Doc, meron akong factory, meron akong planta, or I have an office, and could you please join us? And then you come in. Normally, what does an occupational physician look into, or what meron ba kayong checklist na, okay, these are the top 10 that every company needs to pay attention to?
Yes, definitely. It's the occupational health and standards, again, based on the Department of Labor Regulation. So may OSH guidelines talaga tayong sinusunod. So that's the handbook. Para siyang, yeah, so it's actually your handbook to actually check. Number one, as I mentioned, compliance to these regulations. How are we consistent with these programs? And then from there, you already build, kasi yun muna yung foundation, or these are the basics. Then from there, you try to innovate. As I mentioned, it's not a provision, or it's not a requirement to do like mental health programs in the workplace. But as I mentioned, because of the pandemic, and if after all we've been through in this COVID-19 challenge, I think it's one of the things that we would want to consider on top of what's already required of us by law.
What tells you that there is a problem in the workplace? Yes, I remember many years ago, before COVID, someone asked me to do a team building program event, and they really couldn't put their finger on the problem until I started observing, and napansin ko nagkakaroon ng interdepartment murahan. They were squabbling, literally hating each other. And so I tailored fit my program for that. Now, you as a physician, what are indicators that, gentlemen or ladies, you have a problem?
Yeah, so that's a very fantastic question. So, as I mentioned, the first one of the more important, equally important partners that you have in health and safety is also the one responsible for building the culture, which is human resources. So, the first person that you would like to ask in terms of determining which aspects of health and safety you would want to focus on, or like team building, is HR. Kasi ano ba yung common issues na kailangan i-resolve ng human resources department? What kind of conversations that are happening? And of course, it will be great to also have, for example, myself as the general manager, it will also be nice to have a conversation from the perspective of the leader and the leaders. What are the top two things that are preventing them from really unlocking the potential of the organization? So, and I'm glad that you were observing these things, kasi to your point, we need to tailor fit the solutions. Hindi siya pwedeng blanket programs or solutions. It has to be something that is true to the company's vision, aligned with their ambition, and ano ba yung goals na gusto nilang i-achieve.
Yeah, because most HR, they just pay attention to absences. Tardiness, absences, underperformance, not hitting the quotas. But on the medical side, kasi you were talking about also safety issues. But I hope, please forgive me for being makulit on this, but because there are business owners who watch us, and they need to at least, I have that problem.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. Actually, what you mentioned, reasons for the absences. Kasi there can be a common, I'll take, before COVID, we had flu, right? So is there a concrete like vaccination program, for example, on influenza? Baka naman nakikita mo yung absences between the usual flu season, which is, for example, July to September. This increased incidences of, again, absenteeism, or increased number of patients calling in sick because of fever, colds, and cough. And then, so dun mo i-build yung mga health and safety programs mo, prevention. That's why I said starting with vaccination, especially with infectious diseases. And to your point, if the company is also, so that's one. Other reasons can be, as I mentioned, kasi dati hindi, I'll raise again issues around mental health and safety. Baka either employees are disengaged, or there is something else. Yung isa kasi very particular about diseases, but the other things can also impact the motivation of the employee, leading to that absences. So it's still data.
Which is very common. Like, let's say for before, no, I haven't seen it lately, but for ano ba yun, yung mga call centers or BPOs, makikita mo after their shift, they all go straight to the nearest pub, nearest restaurant, get drunk. And then when I sat down with a few of them, I said, how can you do that? You've been up all night. You pulled an 8-12 hour stretch. Then you go straight here drinking your morning away. And they said, sir, it's the only way we can fall asleep when we come home.
Mhm.
And sabi ko,
That's
okay,
correct.
these
Yeah.
people have a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And also because of stress. Remember when you're a call center agent, because I also have a couple of friends there and other colleagues from occupational medicine. So the stress levels as well, they deal, let's say when you deal with disgruntled customers, sometimes it's the easiest way to de-stress.
Mhm.
That's why to your point, help them fall asleep, but also de-stress. So that's why it's also important to plan something within the office or planning schedules even, 'di ba? Yung
Mhm.
hindi pwedeng lahat all throughout the year or years graveyard shift ka. These are the things that you would want to partner with your occupational medicine specialist and also with human resources.
Yeah,
And
that's a
yeah.
good point, Dr. Dan, because I know for a fact that I was talking to some security guards, and I discovered that the guards who are always taking the night shift have problems with their blood pressure. So, and
Exactly.
mas madala silang ma-hospital. But anyway, this career of yours as a occupational physician, uh, why did you leave it? Kasi parang nako, very colorful, very
That's true.
challenging. You went to the corporate life. What happened?
Well, that's a very great question and a very classic question I always get asked. So while I was practicing, actually to share with you, of course, to mention, I used to be an occupational physician for a park, for an ocean park in Manila,
Aha,
and
okay.
that's where.
Ocean Park.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So, and then that's where I realized. So, one of the things that were happening there, because they had really nice place, no, so there were glasses there. Kaya lang, because of the fascination with the place, a lot of people hit actually the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, when they carry their babies, that's one of the most unforgettable for me. They hit, buti ko nauna yung mommy, but the ones that hit them first is actually the baby. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started. That gave me an eye opener that aside from being an occupational medicine physician, I think I was capable of also developing strategies in terms of not only to prevent health and safety, but also to ensure that yung goers, yung mga customers in that ocean park. When I was having a conversation with the HR head there, I had a realization. I said, I think I can do this. But I think my first taste of it, in terms of moving into the pharmaceutical industry, aside from discussing with corporate leadership teams, was the high level of interest on what the pharmaceutical industry, especially in research and development, can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the in occupational medicine, kasi, and even access in medicine in general, a significant portion or gap is having continuous access to early detection and treatment. And that for me was very compelling. I was wondering, even if I'm treating 100 patients a day in my practice, there's no way I could go to the fundamental issue, which is really the lack of access and inequality in healthcare. And that has opened my eyes, interestingly, in the pharmaceutical industry in terms
Mm-hmm.
of what we can do at a national scale in terms of helping shape the ecosystem. So, but of course, it was a journey for me. When I first started my role, it was all about the science. I was fascinated with the science. But then, when I discovered that these life-saving medicines, hindi pala sila na-access agad. And that got me even more interested on, moving now to full-time to corporate.
Okay, but how does that happen? Because traditionally, the pharmaceutical company woos the doctor or the physician to
That's
try
true.
their medicines. They are given scientific seminars, trainings, journals to better appreciate what the pharmaceutical produces for patients of the physician. Kumbaga, ikaw yung nililigawan. But,
Mhm.
did you end up as a scientist first?
Mhm.
Were you part of some research, etc., or was it a desk job immediately?
Yes, it was actually a field-based job immediately. So I started as a medical science liaison for AstraZeneca back in 2011, and that's where I started because I was hired then to ensure to understand the journey of again heart attack patients, patients suffering from heart attacks, and that
Which is
got me
close to
interested.
your heart. Sorry, no,
Exactly.
no pun intended, but close to your heart because of yung mga pasaway na lalaki sa pamilya mo.
That's true.
Mm.
So yun, so that got me very interested. And it was actually a very tough decision because no doctor is trained for the corporate world. But like as I mentioned, what got me interested is that the value of this life-saving medicine that during that time was of high interest for me, and that
Mhm.
could potentially, to your point, save my family. So as I got into the job and as I had conversations with again both the physicians and the patients, I saw, to your point, I saw the value of the science that, you know, you cannot, I mean, there isn't really an opportunity for you to basically survive heart attacks or even prevent it.
Mhm.
But also at the same time, how the journey for me was also, I would say, relatively long in terms of discovering what else I can do beyond the science. Because right now, what I've observed in my profession, at least in when I went to pharmaceutical medicine, is that even to your point, when doctors, physicians, and even patients are very much open to it, but there is still some opportunities. It's not getting to the patients faster. It's not getting to the patients more consistently. And also the openness too in terms of coming together as a society, as in a community to really champion for healthcare.
Yeah, I will be going to that
Mhm.
later, but I have discovered that there are options, products,
Yes.
and opportunities that are available, but even doctors, it is not their top of mind, especially with
Yes.
cancer, with
Mm-hmm.
COVID. Parang I remember a conversation with one of my good friends who's a doctor, and he said, alam mo Sito, mas mabilis ka pang nakaka-pick up ng information tungkol dyan sa mga produkto kaysa sa amin. But I
That's
said,
true.
but I have a natural curiosity for this thing. So I suppose that is what drives you, Dr. Dan.
Yes, exactly. Kasi parang actually when I was a student or even a practitioner, I really hated reading clinical data kasi it's something
Mhm.
that I could not understand. But that was a significant part of my job. How can I translate this clinical data into something that our clinical practitioners can actually use on a day-to-day basis? Because they
Because their
don't.
training is
Yes.
anatomy, medicine,
Mhm.
but not pharmacology.
Yeah, yes, that's one, but also even the data. O pag sinabi mo yung survival rate is better than this, what does that actually mean? 'Di ba? So, 'di ba mga hazards ratio, ano ba ibig sabihin nun? So, a lot of doctors actually understand that, but how does that translate into clinical practice?
Yeah,
And also,
yeah,
yeah, go
before
ahead.
we go to the break, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to pick up on what the good doctora has pointed out. You need to read the literature. Because at one point, sa kakulitan ko, I read the literature of a particular medicine, particularly on adverse effects. And I said,
Yes.
hello, hindi ko dapat iniinom itong gamot na ito. So I had to go back to my doctor and said, do you know I have this condition? Nako, Sito, you didn't tell me. You shouldn't drink that medicine. So read the literature. Don't just take it as gospel truth. Okay, anyway, we'll go for a quick break. When we return, I'd like to track your journey from doctora to executive, to boss, to mom, to manager here on Agenda. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. And with us today as our featured interview is Dr. Diana Edralin. She is the General Manager of the Pharmaceuticals Division of Roche Philippines. And she is also an occupational physician and also, I believe, the President ba yung title mo? Doctor regarding the PHAP, yung Pharmaceutical Health, ano na ba yun?
Association of the Philippines.
Pasensya ka na. Ang dami mong title. Alam mo kayo mga doktor, yan ang hate na hate ko sa mga doktor. 3-page ang mga resumes. Anyway, okay, Dr. Diana, we were talking about occupational medicine, and then we transition to you going to the private sector for pharmaceuticals with which is the first company that you joined? You said AstraZeneca, was it?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and then but since then you've joined quite a number of other companies.
Yes, there are two more. So after my journey with AstraZeneca, I moved on to Eli Lilly. Then from cardiovascular, I now focus on diabetes, which again something close to my heart because it's a disease that's also plaguing our family right now. So I went on to become a medical affairs officer there or advisor, and then eventually Eli Lilly gave me the opportunity because Eli Lilly is a US-based company also focused on diabetes. So it's the first company that gave me an opportunity to become the medical director.
Okay, and what does being a medical director entail? Kasi parang MD. Pareho ba ng trabaho yan? MD, medical doctor, medical director, or is it a completely different world?
Yeah, I think it's now more expansive, right? So when you become medical director, the foundation of the work that you do is built on the science, right? Understanding the science of the drugs. Again, as you mentioned, focusing on ensuring that these drugs, products, and services are used in accordance to the labels that have been approved by the Philippine FDA. To your point, ensuring that it's used for the right patients based on its efficacy and safety. That's the primary goal. And of course, an important component of that is also the license to operate, which means that you are also in charge in general of ensuring that again, as you conduct the the business ethically, you also are in compliance with the local regulations, specifically with the Philippine FDA. And of course, but now it becomes even more exciting because in my practice, or at least in my career, I also became in charge of not only regulatory affairs, but also overseeing quality assurance. Yan, yung mga counterfeit, yung mga product complaints, and clinical research. As mentioned, a significant portion of the medical director's role is the conduct of research and development or clinical research within the country, but even globally, depending on which countries you're participating or partnering with for a clinical trial. Aside from that, we call it patient safety, yung pharmacovigilance. A lot of these are global companies and pharmaceutical companies. There is a specific division that's only meant and dedicated for patient safety.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm sorry, no? Medyo na-overwhelm ako. Because, I always thought, medical director, mga nag-uutos-utos lang yan ng mga nagbebenta ng gamot, yung mga retailers ba tawag ninyo doon. But apparently, it is a really serious job that is local, global, protecting the quality of the medicines, protecting the market, ensuring the future of the medicine as it applies to the patients, etc. But may oras ka pa ba?
Well, as I mentioned, if you're passionate, I think being a physician as a doctor, to be quite honest, dito may quality of life ka. Remember, when you're a doctor, you're always on call. There are no holidays for you when you're a practitioner. So for me, this is, of course, there is still time. What I appreciated is that I'm very passionate about what I do. Whenever I do my job, I always remember the impact and my passion to help patients. What keeps me driving. But also at the same time, I get to enjoy holidays. from time to time. So ngayon, may
Uh-huh.
Pasko na, may
Okay.
Christmas na, compared sa dati when you're on call. So a lot of our physicians have to sacrifice that quality of life
Yeah,
sometimes.
I know because I have a friend who is a physician, and every time he gets invited to an event or a party, he has to have an antigen test because he doesn't really know whether he's got COVID or not. Parang getting
Yeah.
COVID has become part of the life. So mga kaibigan, if you have friends who are doctors, please appreciate them more
Yes.
because just like nurses and soldiers, our doctors now have one foot in the grave, ika nga nila, from COVID. No? Now,
True.
moving on. So you joined Eli Lilly, you became medical director, and then you went to Novo Disc,
Nordisk. Yes, it's a
Nordisk. Ano ba
yes.
yung Nordisk? Kasi parang, ay, is that in a Norwegian company or
It's
something?
it's actually a Danish company. So
Ooh.
yeah, so Novo Nordisk is again relatively similar to Eli Lilly, is focused on again diabetes or cardiometabolic, like metabolic diseases rather, obesity,
Mhm.
hemophilia. So yan yung mga key focus areas nila, and among others, right? So and again, it was a huge opportunity because it became even more expansive. So the based on what I mentioned to you earlier, the beauty of moving into Novo Nordisk during that time was building a medical team from scratch. So what I mentioned to you earlier, now the
Mhm.
challenge was a bit different because during that time, Novo Nordisk wanted to expand in the
Mhm.
Philippines and wanted to strengthen its medical affairs team. So that was the challenge there, and I really appreciated that because now we even have a specific team focused on patient education for diabetes, specifically on the acceptance of insulins,
So
because
you taking jobs because some people would say, "Grabe
mhm,
naman yung Ali na yan. She keeps changing jobs or jumping from one company to another
mhm,
without realizing that in one job it was a personal thing because of heart
yes,
issues with your family. In another job, it was because it was a big challenge as an executive, as a team
yes,
leader, and now with Nordisk, it was a challenge in building a new team altogether. Kumbaga, hindi yung pumasok at upo ka na lang. Ngayon,
yes.
talagang you have to build it from the ground up.
Yes. So yes, actually, to your point, usually when the CV is seen, that's the backstory that a lot of people don't know. Because I think it's very important, as you mentioned, we have to enjoy, we have to be passionate in the things that we do, but also we need to continuously challenge ourselves in terms of how else we would like to grow. How else we would like to learn, and what kind of impact we want to create. And I think during that time, that was a very important calling for me, that okay, now I want to take the challenge. I want to level up the game and see what more I can do with a more expansive, team, and with a bigger team.
Mhm. Okay. Now, so you create your medical team. Tama ba yun? Medical,
Yes,
what?
medical affairs and
Med,
medical
med,
and regulatory affairs team. Yun ang
okay. So
complete name niya.
So
Yes.
you build that. Does that also? I suppose that also includes getting lawyers into the team.
So there is a separate division for that. So you're right,
Okay, okay.
but legal and compliance is a separate division, not under medical and regulatory affairs. But you're
But you
right,
work together because
definitely
they
we
have to
work.
make the representations.
Yes, the legal and compliance officers, which are usually lawyers, yes, we do work side by side, and they are
Mhm.
my usually we call it my first BFFs in the company, because we have to ensure, yeah, because when you go into a job, as you mentioned, yan ang una mong titignan. Like when you asked me, is there something that you need to look into when you land into a job? And that's the first thing that I usually look for. How is this company compliant? How is it upholding ethical business practices?
Mhm.
Because, like I said, I'm in charge of the license to operate, and these are the things that you usually have to look for in partnership with legal and
Yeah,
compliance.
because if a company is more inclined to do shortcuts or
Exactly.
accommodations, medyo on the tail end,
Mm.
you as the director will have to deal with all the ugliness that they create along the journey.
Yes, definitely. Actually, before we are granted our license to operate, the license of the doctor is one of the requirements that we submit to the Philippine FDA. So we are really accountable for that.
No, no. Okay. So you did Eli Lilly, Nordis, AstraZeneca, and now you're with Roche Philippines. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And
Okay. What's the difference between Roche Philippines and Roche wherever? Kasi parang I get the impression marami.
yeah. So we just attach it because that's the legal name. Obviously, it's still Roche. We just say Philippines because it is our affiliation in the Philippines, or ito yung branch of the company within the
Mhm.
country. So of course, when you say you go to Singapore, you say Roche Singapore. When you say Roche in Hong Kong, Roche Hong Kong, so that there's distinction. But of course, that's also the legal name. But it's still Roche, right? So
Mhm.
wherever you are in the world, we are still affiliated, or we are still headquartered in Basel. So we are still representing our global organization.
Okay, I have to be honest and correct me if I'm wrong, no?
Of
Kasi
course.
baka nakakahiya, lalabas na yung pagka-ignorante ko. I only associate Roche with two things in my life.
Okay.
One is when my sister had breast cancer and I had to really shake the trees to find a place where we could get this particular medicine. And it was Roche, Philippines, that had this special program for cancer patients where they could provide them a certain medicine at a very special discount. And vitamins. Bakit ba nasa utak ko lagi vitamins? Is that wrong or right?
No, that's correct at first, and thank you for sharing your story about your sister. I'm glad that you were able to find Roche with that. Of course, cancer is our main key focus area. And then to your point, vitamins, the answer is correct. You know, one of the very first innovations of Roche is actually a vitamin E. So they started the portfolio uh, um, back in the day. Roche started with these medicines, right? So it's very interesting on how Roche continues to evolve and I would say challenge itself in terms of innovation. So since Roche was founded in 1896, they started with that. And then, so vitamins talaga. Actually, there are other drugs to that. Meron pang popular drug about weight reduction. Yan, saying Roche. And then, as you
Mhm.
move on, so now Roche is more focused on biologics, or which are bigger molecules, to what you mentioned, from a therapeutic areas that are focused on vitamins. It has evolved in itself in because our thrust is to do now what patients need next, and now we're focused on very difficult to treat diseases or serious disease
Okay,
conditions.
when you say biologics, can you explain that term? Because I get the impression that if you say biologics medicine, these are medicines that are life-threatening
Yeah.
for life-threatening conditions.
Yes, life-threatening conditions in general, but technically biologics means these are bigger molecules. Now, they cannot be compacted or manufactured in a tablet or in a capsule. So
Mhm.
usually when you say biologics, they have to go straight to the circulatory system. They have to be either injected or infused. So it's in more of a technical term. But to your point, the
Mhm.
fact that biologics, it's you might associate it with life-threatening diseases, it's a big yes, right? So vaccines are also considered biologics because of the complexity of the disease, right? So it takes about a more complex molecule to actually treat them. So,
No.
but of course, that's most of it, but not all biologics naman treat life-threatening uh, conditions.
So it's like cancer,
Mm-hmm.
diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
COVID,
Yes,
HIV.
that's true.
What are the non-life-threatening biologics medication or conditions?
Like hormone replacement therapy, right? So for example, there when you lack of
Pampabata?
that's a very controversial
No, no, no.
statement,
Actually,
but
I won't mislead our audience, ladies and gentlemen. hormone therapy, there are people, and to my knowledge lang, no, my limited knowledge, particularly women who are affected by hormonal imbalance. And it gets, in some cases, hormone therapy is really
That's correct.
prescribed by physicians like yourself,
Yes.
Dr. Diana.
Yes, exactly. So that's one component of it. The other is yung growth hormone naman. If you lack the growth hormone, so hindi ka ayon dun sa iyong growth and
Naku,
development.
ang laki ng kikitahin nyo sa Pilipinas, ha? Bayan ng Barangay 411.
So that's in general, yeah, exactly. Pero iba naman, Cito, yung cause nun eh. Of course, it's usually malnutrition, diba? But we're talking about when it's the lack of the secretion, let's say, in the brain of a specific hormone. You also use that. And then, of course, you also have other diseases such as, so aside from the growth hormones, meron ka naman ding for the prevention. So, for example, not necessarily Roche products, but for example, yung osteoporosis. So it is life-threatening, but there are also drugs that are used to prevent it.
Okay, now you're now leading Roche here in the Philippines. Now, what is the focus? What is the direction of the company? Or what is the primary concern? Because you've mentioned inequality and access quite a few times in the interview, which kind of tells me that might be a concern.
It is definitely. As I mentioned, we at Roche have been staying true to our commitment in focusing in terms of substantial investment in research development, finding solutions to complex challenges in healthcare. But this time with a clear focus on a unique innovation model. So as I mentioned earlier, we are the largest investor in life sciences globally. We've invested more than over 13 billion US dollars annually in terms of research and development to bring those innovative solutions. As I mentioned, in cancer, we also have drugs in hemophilia, diseases of the blood, immune system. We also provided innovations in COVID. So both for inpatient, hospitalized patients and outpatients. So in women's health, also diseases affecting the brain and the spine, specifically this spinal muscular atrophy affecting children, which is a genetic condition which makes the muscles of the children when they are born very weak and causes problem with movement, even breathing. And recently, we also have innovations related for vision or ophthalmology. So those are the key focus areas that we have. It's a lot, but to your point, while we continuously invest on research and development and life-saving medicines, there is still a gap there that we notice, especially in the Philippines. Which is the lack of access, timely access. So giving the right medicine to the right patient at the right time is a gap. So we did a study back in 2015 in Roche, wherein we tried to see how our Filipino patients having access to the life-saving medicines products that we have. So during that time, we did an analysis and the data showed that it was only 1 out of 10 Filipinos who are eligible or who can benefit from Roche medicines have access to that. And that is very, I would say, a huge gap that we're aiming that we can actually make a significant...
Where is the problem, Doctora? Because I don't know, me, because I'm a communicator, I teach communication and crisis management. What I always point out to some of my friends in Congress is, guys, you've got to just scrap that ban on advertising or public information for pharmaceutical products, because there is a ban, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
you're not allowed to advertise your products. But as a consequence, direct consequence of that, either other companies or manufacturers go around the ban or people just don't know. I mean, like us, if I hadn't made calls to friends and friends of friends, I would not have known that Roche makes available that cancer treatment medication with a special price because you have that program. So parang sabi ko, kita nyo na, if this had been publicly known, we could have moved faster.
Yeah, so I think that you raised a very good point, Asito. The number one challenge in terms of access is, to your point, also the lack of information, or a lack of a information that is comprehensible and easily accessible to patients and even to our government stakeholders and regulators. I
Mm.
think there have been some progress around that because of course, using the social media and the digital platforms during COVID. But I think there is still huge opportunity to make that information available. And one of the things, if I would like to highlight with Roche right now, we have actually increased our presence in Facebook. We have a Facebook community page called Strong for Someone, wherein at the time of the pandemic, we continuously provide them information exactly what you mentioned,
Mhm.
especially for cancer patients, where to access the drug, how to access them, provide information on which government programs will allow them to access these medicines potentially even for free.
Yeah,
So that's
because
one. Yeah.
because when you think about it, we cannot be hypocrites about the situation, because when COVID struck and people were dying, kulang na lang, di ba? They were telling the FDA, will you please ease up your restrictions?
Yes.
Telling government, can you speed it up? And then people
Mhm.
were publicly talking and promoting even so-called medicines, yung mga Chinese herbs, ganito, ganyan.
Mhm.
So the best way is just to make information readily available. And
That's true.
to our members in Congress who are watching, pakiusap po, aralin ninyo ito,
Mhm.
because, only because your life is at risk will you open the doors, and once it's not at risk, you close the doors again. Anyway, so what
Mhm.
other areas are the cause for inequality or lack of knowledge?
So aside from the lack of knowledge, second, now we go to the systems that you mentioned. I like how you perfectly framed it. So I think the pandemic again has taught us that there is an opportunity to make our systems more flexible, agile, and really address yung parang ima-match mo kung ano yung need. Kasi as much as we want to, do steps one to 100, there are situations that really call for some flexibility and agility. So one opportunity, aside from providing consistent, adequate information that is comprehensible for all, sana nga in local language and dialects pa, is the systems in place, are the systems in place. So it's very important. We hope that there is much more consistency and predictability in the access to medicines, especially yung timely approvals. Because while FDA, I think, is now making good progress on having faster approvals on the innovation, the
Mhm.
other roadblock that we have now is the Philippine National Formulary. So for, let's say, government hospitals, before they can even purchase these medicines, kasi when we talk about inequality, we talk about the most remote areas. Dapat yung isang teacher, for example, in Tacloban, or a farmer in Ilocos or Pampanga can actually have the same access, the same person as a person,
And those medicines need to be in that list, yung formulary na
exactly.
tinatawag mo, listahan ng mga gamot na pinapayagan ng pamahalaan.
Yes, that
Okay.
of course. Yes.
Unfortunately, Dr.
Oh.
Diana, 9:00 na. Baka magbayad multa ako. I will have to ask you for a part 2. We didn't even touch on the other programs of Roche. We didn't even talk about PHAP, but clearly you are doing such a good job.
Thank
You're a
you.
great interview. So if you would, can we reschedule as a part 2 at some other time?
Yes, definitely, Cito. And I really want to thank you and your team for this wonderful opportunity. Yes, we should have a chat again soon.
Okay, thank you very much. That's Dr. Diana Edralin of PHAP and of Roche Philippines. Pasensya na po, napasarap masyado. Gabriel, kasalanan mo ito, hindi mo ako binigyan ng warning. It's 9:00 already. And so we will now go to our daily, our closing blessing for the day. And it is from Melody BT. Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. And I do hope that you all have a great day. God bless all of you. Please include Team Agenda in your prayers, and please keep it here on One News.